Hi there. Welcome back for another Over a Cup Live. I am so glad you're here. This month's Over a Cup Live is on building meaningful friendships. So, we've already talked a couple months ago about how to get to know God better and how knowing Him helps inform our identity. Then we talked last week or last month about our identity and how that helps us be more secure in ourselves, and now we're going to move on specifically to friendships because until we are solid on who God is and trust Him, and then we are solid on our identity in Him, it makes friendships so much harder if we don't already have those two things taken care of. Once we know those two things and trust them and believe them, then it makes friendship so much easier because instead of needing friendships to fill up a space in us, then we are able to give from a space of fullness. We're able to reach out to others from a space of fullness. So if you haven't, I would encourage you to go back and look at those other two videos. I'll link them here in the comments for you. But those will help you lay a good foundation for how to build meaningful friendships. Because without those two things, trust in God and the solid identity of who you are in Christ, it makes friendships so much harder. So, our goals for this session: one, to learn how to be inviting to others. Next, discover how to help our kids choose friends wisely. And then practice live with open arms and an open heart. So, let's first talk about being inviting. So, when we're talking about being inviting, often when we're struggling with friendships, we want to be the one to be invited. And we may be thinking, either ourselves or our kids, why is no one inviting me? Why is no one reaching out to me? Why is no one sitting with me at lunch or at church or in Bible class or whatever? And when we enter friendships from a place of scarcity, it does make it really hard to find friends. I moved, oh goodness, over 20 times in my childhood. So I lived in about 5 to 6 states and about 12 towns and about 12 towns and about 20 houses before the time I was 20. So when I got to high school in ninth grade, and it was like my fifth or sixth school, I was so over making friends. I had a few who reached out to me, but I was not reaching out to anybody. I would what did the awkward cafeteria sit by myself. I was completely not confident in myself, didn't know how to reach out to others or anything like that. And pretty much had shut down by that point. So it was really difficult for me to make friends because even those who reached out to me, I was so hungry for friendships and needy that it didn't go well, even in those spaces. And so, whenever we're being inviting, we need to remember that we need to be the ones to reach out to others. And it helps. I know some of you are introverts, and for some of you, this is so, so scary. I have been in that place many times of being the new person, though I'm more fall on the introvert extrovert line. I have some kids who are more self contained. I wouldn't say they're total introverts, but they are more self contained. And this can be really, really hard. It can also be hard to make friends if you're one of those, if you're kind of awkward or your kids are kind of awkward. I have one or two sons who are, I would just say, they're flat out nerds. And so others around them can be awkward. Friendships can be awkward for them. But regardless of your friendship style, regardless of your personality style, I want to give you some places where you can find friends and help your kids find friends. For first and foremost, if your children are younger and still in the play date age, I would really encourage you to reach out to others for play dates. And I'm assuming that you are in a church community or a church family. If you're not in a church community or church family, that is the very best place to start. Because when you enter into a church family and church community, it automatically gives you built in areas to make friends, whether it's in Bible class, whether it's with small groups or different community groups in your church. So, for this, I'm assuming you're part of a local church body because that helps tremendously. That would be step one. I would even say step zero if you're not there. So, if you are part of a church community or church body, or maybe your kids are in preschool or pre K or something like that, kindergarten, create play dates with their friends' parents. So get together at Chick-fil-A, a local park. It doesn't have to be your house. I had so many play dates with my kids' friends when they were little, and we almost never met at each other's houses, quite honestly. There's so many other places you can meet at nowadays that if you want to have people over to your house and that's your style and you're comfortable with it, by all means do that. But if you're more like me and it does not work for your personality, then meet at Chick-fil-A, meet at a local park or splash pad or whatever, depending on the time of year. But play dates are an excellent time to make friends for your kids and for yourself. Will those friendships always stick long term? No, they won't. Some of mine from playdates, I was really good friends with the moms, and I'm still good friends with them. Others, we're good acquaintances. We talk every time we see each other. Our children, I think, are acquaintances, but we never became best friends, and that's okay. But during that stage in our lives, it did give us a good support system and friend network. Another thing you can do is while waiting at practice. Often our kids naturally make friends while they're at practice, whether it's at swim or baseball or karate or whatever. That's a good way for them to naturally make friends is to be involved in an activity. So I would really look for activities that your kid can be involved in that go along with their interests. It doesn't have to be sports related. I have kids who are in band. I've had kids do art classes and Lego classes and all those types of things. But look for their interests and what they're interested in. And then while they're doing that activity, if you have the opportunity to hang around, just hang out and make friends with the parents there. Now, that can be as easy as saying hi. And that's, I have this in our how thing. Just reach out and say hi to the person sitting next to you because oftentimes they may be as shy as you are, if not more. They may not even really be getting outside their own world. Sometimes I'm doing grocery lists while I'm at my kids' practices and not really paying attention to those around me. So I've had people just say hi to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, hi, and want to carry on conversation. But I was so involved in my own world, reading a book or something like that, that I just didn't think of saying hi. Sometimes just sharing a smile with someone. So, at some practices, I've made friends pretty quickly. At others, it just wasn't the same. And so it probably took me a good 6 to 9 months, maybe a little bit longer, at my son's swim practices to start talking to people there. Would I consider them friends yet? Not really. I mean, they're acquaintances. I talk to them while we're sitting there, but it does give me someone to chat with at our swim meets. It gives me someone to chat with other swim practices, and we're becoming friends over just these little bits and pieces at our kids' practices. But it started with just a smile, someone saying hi, and then continuing the conversation from there. Volunteering is also an excellent way to make friends for you and your kids, whether you're volunteering at school or volunteering at church. When you volunteer with people, especially in a activity that really means a lot to you, it gives you a natural connection with them. I have made lots of friends volunteering, whether it was volunteering to help at my kids' school or whether it was volunteering through their activities or through church. Some of my closest friendships have come from volunteering with others and having things in common with them. So that's a great way to seek friends out. And then finally, just seeking out friendships. So whether you happen to see that lonely person sitting by themselves at church, or maybe you're at an event with a group of friends and you see someone who is kind of with your group, because if you're our church does an e-women's conference. We go there as a group every year. And so some people come with their friends, some people don't come with their friends. I often show up not knowing anyone because we go to a rather large church, so I never know who's going to be there. But if there's someone sitting by themselves, because I have been that person so often as a child and then as an adult when we've moved, I cannot stand for someone to be by themselves. So I'll just sit down and say hi. If they're shy and don't say hi back, that's fine. But I try to seek out those people who are sitting by themselves and who may be feeling lonely also. Or if you're in with a group of friends, still kind of have your radar out for those who might be feeling lonely and you can draw into the group. So, how do we find these types of friends? How do we begin that conversation? I've already kind of alluded to it some, but sometimes all you have to do is say hi, and they may open up and continue the conversation from there. Sometimes they won't. I have had friends who I'm pretty good friends with, but they are huge introverts. And so I even kind of made it a game over a few years to get them to talk to me, and we just ask them about their kids, ask them about their family, how things were going over a period of years until they finally were more comfortable enough to go out to eat with me for lunch or something like that. But just saying hi is a great way to start that conversation. I already mentioned look for the lonely one, the one that's kind of by themselves. Some introverts honestly like being by themselves. But a lot of people, even if they're an introvert, like to be included in the group. Even if you don't expect them to talk a whole lot, they still don't necessarily want to sit by themselves and be completely alone. So look for that person by themselves. Again, I mentioned just smiling at someone, whether it's while you're volunteering or out of practice or something like that, just smiling can open the doors. Offering to help someone, maybe while you're volunteering or something like that. Maybe while you're at practice and you see that the coaches need some help and you offer to help, and maybe some other parents offer to help. Some of my dearest friends have come from this, where we were at practices together and the coaches obviously needed help in some areas. And so we just volunteered to help together. We didn't even really know each other at the time, but they have become some of my dearest friends over the last 10 years. And it started out by being helpful in an organization we are both a part of. Another way to do that, and this is one of my kind of secret sauce ways, I should have typed it on here, but I'll give it to you as a bonus feature, is complimenting somebody sincerely, not just complimenting randomly, but saying that you like their hair or their dress or their shirt or shoes or whatever. But complimenting people opens more doors than you may think. I have opened many a conversation door by telling someone, "Oh, I really like your hair," or "I really like that." And showing up consistently over a long time is a great way to do that. For example, in church, I am part of a big church, and so we switched our services. And so I was no longer sitting near the people I usually did because we were at one service and we split into two. Well, when we split into two services, I was sitting in front of this lady and she was sitting behind me. And one random day, our preacher walked past us as he was going to the front and said, "Have you two met each other?" Honestly, I should have met her long before this and at least said hi, but I hadn't. And so we just exchanged names and stuff like that. Well, then it came, we would just say hi to each other as we sat there. And then we would smile at each other as we sat there. And then I started sitting in her row with my family. And then it just became the more I sat with her, the more we got to know each other over the last few months, the more we've talked to each other. Do we go out for lunch now? Not right now. But I am getting to know her little bit by little bit every Sunday as I sit near her and just greet her by name every week and ask how she's doing and really mean it. Ask how her kids are, her grandkids are, something like that. But that is a great way to make friends, is just exchanging names to someone who's sitting around you in an event or at church, and then just striking up conversation little bit by little bit each week as you see them. And over time, you may build a friendship that way. So here are some questions for you. If you're like, "Tara, I get it. Saying hi is good. Smiling at someone's good. Complimenting someone's good. But where do I go from there?" These may seem obvious, but they're ones I kind of keep in my back pocket for all the situations. And I would say, try to remember the answers to these questions. I am horrible at remembering the answer to what school do they go to questions. That is probably my worst one. I am so bad at that. But here are some just easy questions you can start up with parents. How old are your kids? That's a great question to ask. What grade are they in? Is a great question to ask. Where do you live? Is another really good question, because then maybe you live in the same area and you can be like, "Oh, I live in that area too." What activities are your kids in? So maybe they're in swim with you right then, like some of my newly friends are, but maybe there's other activities that their kids are in, and you can get them started talking about that. What school do they go to? Depending on your situation, this may be really easy. At our church, which is so huge, there are so many schools represented. I honestly fail miserably at this one and probably ask them 5 times what school do their kids go to. But asking these type of questions can naturally lead to other conversations. So instead of waiting to be invited, I would say the first step to building meaningful friendships is to be inviting yourself by following some of these steps. Now we want to talk about choosing friends wisely. So I just talked about being inviting, but now I'm transitioning choosing friends wisely. What do I mean by that? What I want is for you to think of friendship as concentric circles, because oftentimes we think of friends, they're either our friends, they're our acquaintances, or they're out. And I want you to think more of friendship as in concentric circles. So this inner circle is ones that we would consider our best friends, our closest friends, our people or our kids' people, their closest friends. And these need to be friendships that point ourselves and our kids to Jesus. These need to be ones who have like values and that we know are strong Christians or come from strong Christian families. So when hard times come, they're not going to encourage us to do things we shouldn't do, but they're going to encourage us toward Jesus. Now, the next row of friendships, the next circle, still needs to be friends that hold your same values and beliefs, but these, for whatever reason, may not be your best friends. Maybe they're people you're friends with at church or at sporting events that your kids go to or other things, but for whatever reason, they haven't moved into your inner circle of people, and that's fine. Sometimes friendships you click really well, sometimes you don't, sometimes you're acquaintances, and that's okay. If they're just in your second round of friends for whatever reason, maybe you don't know them very well yet or something like that, but those still need to be friends that hold the similar beliefs to yours, because often they are ones who transition into your inner circle or your kids' inner circle. And we want to do our best to surround ourselves with people who, again, will point us to Jesus during hard times. Now, the next circle can be those who are our acquaintances. They may be people we're trying to influence. So maybe that kid at school who's a great kid, we really love them and our kids love being around them, but maybe they have different values than our family. And so we want to keep in mind as a family, we want to influence them, but we don't necessarily want to be influenced by them. Some of their decisions may not be ones that your family, the same values your family holds, whether about media usage, whether about places you go or ways you spend your time, but they can still be your friends. They just may not be your closest friends or your kids' closest friends. Then we have another circle, which is, I would say, is more those definite acquaintances where, for whatever reason, maybe you don't have as many things in common. Maybe you just don't click the same with them as you do other people, or other friendships. Whatever reason, they may be acquaintances of some sort or another, and that's fine. This could be just about anybody. And then you might have some other smaller circles between them, because sometimes friends of our children or of ourselves start out in this inner circle. We're really tight. And for whatever reason, they break our trust. Now, a lot of times our kids will say, yes, they're my friend. No, they're not my friend, and stick them way out here in the cold. When instead, I'm going to propose a healthier way to look at this is if they are in one of these inner circles and really break your trust or your children's trust, maybe put them out more out here in the acquaintance circle instead of completely throwing them out in the cold, and let them earn their trust back in. So the more they show themselves trustworthy, the further they can come back into your circles or your children's friendship circles, but not necessarily throwing them out in the cold and saying, we're not friends anymore. Because I know kids have a huge tendency to say that, and it can really hurt hearts and hurt friendships when really maybe a kid hurt another kid. And so maybe they don't need to be our best friend right now, but we can still be kind to them. We can still be friends with them. We can still play with them at school or hang out with them a little bit, but we may not tell them our deepest, darkest secrets or have them to our house every Saturday or whatever. So I want you to think of friendships as these circles, and the ones in your inner circle need to be those who hold the same values and beliefs that your family does, that help point you to Jesus. The last one I want to encourage you to do is have open arms, because a lot of times when we're making friends with others, we have the tendency to be just two of us. So we say we're best friends, and then there's just two of you in that best friend circle. And when push comes to shove, or when hard times come, it is really hard to hold one person up if you are their only best friend and there is not another support system around. For example, in the 5-day friendship challenge I did a few months ago, I share the story of how one of my friends had her husband die unexpectedly about 7 or 8 years ago. It was so unexpected and so huge that our friend group just surrounded her for several weeks, showing up at her house, bringing her food, just sitting quietly with her. But it was such a hard and heavy situation. I don't know how many evenings while we were just sitting there with her and crying, I looked around at that circle of friends that we have and was so grateful that it was not just her and I being best friends without this whole circle of friends around us, because none of us could have held her up healthily, just on our own. We definitely needed that circle of friends to surround her. So, whether it's you or your kids who are tempted to just be best friends with one person and not let anyone else into that circle, I would encourage you to have open arms and let many good friends into that circle because one, it's just a healthier relationship to not be one on one and only be best friends with each other and no one else and let no one else in the circle. And two, when push comes to shove or when hard times come, it works a lot better if there are more people to help hold the one up who is hurting instead of just one of you. Or whenever exciting times come and good times come, then it gives you more to celebrate with together. It gives you more people to do things with. So I would really encourage you to have open arms as you're thinking about these friendships. Instead of being really exclusive with just one friend or one family, to be inclusive and let each others in, because oftentimes we tend to be jealous of that one really good friend. And I want you and your children to release that tendency towards jealousy and let others in. So, as we think about that today, first, I want you to be inviting to others. It can be so scary and so hard, but it is so rewarding when we're inviting to others. Next, I want you to choose friendships wisely and think of them as circles and not a black and white. And next, I want you to remember to have open arms and let others in. If you need some more ideas, here are some examples of good friendships. There's many children's books that have them and picture books. So here I have some for some older kids. So, The Hobbit is a great example of friendship through hard times. John Flanagan has some excellent young adult books, about 10 plus is what I would call them. The Ranger's Apprentice series and the Brother Band Chronicles are excellent examples of good, healthy friendships as kids are growing up. The Babysitters Club was one of my favorite when I was a kid, and that's just a group of friends who work and solve problems together. And then Anne of Green Gables is an eternal favorite with her friendship with Diane and with her growing up and the different relationships she encounters there. It's a great example of good friendships. If you have any questions, please let me know and reach out. I'm happy to answer your questions, whether you drop them here in the comments or shoot me an email. And speaking of email, here's some different ways to connect. So here's my email address, my website, my Substack, where you can sign up for a monthly newsletter. And then on Instagram, I am at Tara L. Com. Let me pray as we end. God, thank you so much for our friendships. Thank you for those you have already blessed us with and those you will continue to bless us with. I just ask that you will be with us. Give us the courage to be inviting to others and to see others that we may miss throughout our days. I ask that you will give us and our kids wisdom to choose friends wisely and to not see friendship as something that is black and white, but as these concentric circles where people can pass in and out of them freely instead of either being our best friend or not being a friend at all. I also ask that you will give us open arms. Help us to let go of fear and jealousy of our friendships and our friends, and help us to have open arms and be willing to let others into the circle. Thank you so much for first allowing us to be your friends and being a friend of us. In Jesus' name, amen. You all have a great month, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye bye.